Have you ever thought about the cross? I mean, ever really thought about it? Quite glibly, we decorate our churches with it. We hang it around our necks as a kind of lucky charm. We trace it on ourselves during the liturgy. Yet in itself, it isn't a very pleasant thing at all. It's an instrument of torture and death, a gibbet. What would people think if we had a model of a gallows set up in church, an instrument of capital punishment? And so you can understand why Peter, who had just made a great confession of faith, wanted to put a stop to it. For Jesus to announce that he was to be killed meant that he would be hung on a cross to bleed and suffocate to death. Don't do it. For Peter, there had been the glow of the response of Jesus to his confession. Simon Bar-Jonah, you are a happy man. Jesus will build his church on the rock of Peter, and the gates of the underworld would never prevail against it. And now, no, this mustn't happen to you, Lord. The cost was too much for Peter. He lost his life, even when he'd left his secure fishing job, sacrificing all that for the pull of this strange, exotic man. It had never gone through his mind that there might be bloodshed, death even. And even when he confessed Jesus as the Christ, the Son of the living God, it was in the hope that there would be kudos, glamour, and triumph. But here is this man saying that he will suffer and die. Don't do it. Jesus immediately rebukes him. Get behind me, Satan. Don't tempt me away from my chosen path. I must do this. It is the will of my Father. But also he is saying, get behind me. Fall back into line as a disciple. Follow me. Witnessing to the truth, allowing God's purposes to be achieved, transcends the suffering, makes the death worth it, for I shall rise again. Peter clearly did fall back into line, but not for long. After protesting that he would stay with Jesus whatever happened, he was the first to deny that he even knew him. Yet he was one of the first to run to the empty tomb 3 days after the death of Jesus to find the body gone and grave clothes left behind. His growing confidence in the victorious death of Christ, coupled with his conviction that this was indeed the promised Messiah, led him to announce to the crowds in Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost, God has made him both Lord and Messiah, this Jesus whom you crucified. Later, in Rome, he met his own end, following even to death the Christ, the Son of the living God. So in the end, Peter did take up his cross and follow Christ. He lost his life, and by losing it, found it. But not, as we have seen, without a good deal of trouble. This, of course, has a lot to say to us. For the cross is a scandal to us, literally something to trip over. That's not how proper stories go. It stands as a dreadful warning to those who would embrace this faith and practice this religion. And that's probably why people want to sentimentalize it. And that's why people are quite keen on empty crosses, or at least ones where the Saviour hangs with a peaceful expression, as if he's just catnapping in a peculiar position. And the whole episode brings us up against the cost of discipleship, the cost of following Christ. Clearly, this faith is challenging, life-changing, and costly. And it involves changing our whole outlook on life. What we think about God and what we do about the call of Jesus has to come first in our lives. This doesn't mean that there's no time for anything else, but it does mean a change in our scale of priorities, how we organize our time and our money. And to be a follower of Christ means denying ourselves, taking up our cross, and following Christ. The demands are total, both life-threatening and life-enhancing. So first, we are called to return to the seriousness of the call to follow Christ, to put him first and to journey with him, yes, even to the carrying of the cross. That is the only thing in the end that will revitalize the church. But second, I believe that we shouldn't be discouraged by our own and others' constant backsliding, fear, and uncertainty. For Peter's progress towards losing possession of himself was fraught, constantly crumpling under the doubts that assailed him. He only finally moved with full confidence when he insisted on the means of his crucifixion. That crucifixion is vividly depicted by Caravaggio in his painting in Santa Maria del Popolo in Rome. Hoisted on the cross upside down, unworthy to die as Christ did. He lived and taught the faith, but he was a frail human being like us. Yet deep down, he remained convinced of the tenderness of God, God's pure, unbounded love. A love revealed uniquely and poured out for us in Jesus of Nazareth. Few, if any of us, will be called upon to die for our faith, but all of us will have problems professing and practicing it. To see it as a journey, this enterprise, will enable us to take heart from Peter. And as we move forward, sustained by the sacraments and supported by our brothers and sisters, the full import and implications of this profession will become clear. To expect to live on the crest of a wave in our discipleship is unreasonable. To recognize our frailty, juxtaposed to the majesty and love of God, is truly to follow St. Peter. For this community is built on his faith. The same Lord calls us, and the same grace of God, mediated through bread and wine, takes us forward in our journey.